We have a web page we've started working on, and we have the header and footer done, and we still have to do the main content. And one of the things that we didn't deal with yet is this menu. We have the hamburger menu icon visible, but we didn't actually put the menu in, and we also don't have the icons for the social media. So we'll deal with one of those two things in this video, and that being the actual navigation. So we have the hamburger menu, and what we want to do is when we click on this or hover over it, it will display the menu. So let's get to it. So the first thing we want to do is actually go into the index and let's add in that navigation. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put another element in here to help control everything, and that's going to be just the nav. So we'll do nav and go down here and close the nav. I'm going to use an unordered list for the navigation. You see a lot of that when you look at examples for navigation and menus. You see that a lot of people use unordered list. It just allows for an easy manipulation of the content and also spacing around the menu items themselves. So we'll do a UL list item, and let's take a look real quick. We have home, gallery, and resume. So list item, we'll do home, close the tag, gallery, close the tag, and finally resume and close the tag. And last but not least, close the UL tag as well. So let's go ahead and save this, and let's take a look at what we have. Hit refresh. So we have home, gallery, and resume, just like what we put in. The only problem is it puts everything, it shows all the content down because it's displaying underneath. What we really want it to do is be hidden, and we want to get rid of those dots. So we've done this before. Let's go ahead and go back and do it again. We'll go into the style.css, and this is all in the header, so we want to keep everything in the header section so we can find it easily. And I'm going to say nav UL, and we want to get rid of the margin and the padding because the ULs have some padding margin on them, and that can cause issues. And then we're going to list style none, which will get rid of the dots in front of it. Click save, go over, refresh. All right, starting to look a little bit better. Now we want this to be hidden when it's first loaded. So the easiest way to do that is to do display none. I'm going to go ahead and save. Now when we refresh, that's hidden like it was before. It works. Looks good, right? Now all we got to do is get that menu to display. Now there's two different ways to do this. And the first one is hover. And the problem with that is when you use hover, hover does not exist for mobile devices. You don't have a way to hover over anything. You don't have a mouse. So we're going to do hover first, but then we're going to use jQuery and use the click function to get that click and display the menu. And the way we hide this, or the way we get this to show up when somebody mouses over it, is a pseudo class, and it's called hover. And I want it to show up whenever anybody is over the whole navigation, whether or not they're on the hamburger menu or any part of it. So we say nav, hover, and then we want the UL to show up. So we say nav, hover, UL, and display block. Save, refresh. Notice that it doesn't do anything. That's because I'm viewing this as a Pixel X, a 2XL. We want to get rid of the device toolbar. We want to view it as it normally would show up. So I'm going to click on this menu, and I forgot that I had this like bumped way up in size. But now it still works. We mouse over it, hovers, and we've got home, gallery, and resume. Now notice that that bumps everything down as well. What we want it to do is come down over top of the main content. And the way we do that is with positioning. So within here, I'm going to say nav UL. I want it to be position absolute. And with absolute positioning, it is positioned according to the first container that is position relative. And if we put this as it is right now, that will be to the HTML. So if I save this, I'm going to go back, refresh, and so it kind of works, but not really how I want it to show up. Let's go back, position absolute, and this we're going to go up and put nav here, nav position relative, and we'll save it, go back over, refresh. Well, okay, still it's kind of working, but notice it's off the edge. So let's go back and not only position absolute, but let's do we want that content to be to the right. So we'll do right 0 pixels, save it, refresh. Now that's looking a little bit better. I would probably choose to have all the text aligned right on this as well. So let's do text align right. And we might have to do this on the LI instead of the UL. So let's just see real quick if this works. Refresh. There we go. So we're pretty much where we want to be on this. The only problem is, of course, now if I go back to where I'm looking at this as a device, if I click on it, that shows up, but it doesn't go away unless I click elsewhere. Well, that's interesting. That kind of works. So I guess we could leave it that way if we wanted to. But I said we were going to use jQuery, so by golly, we're going to use jQuery. The jQuery is basically JavaScript on steroids. It allows you to do a lot of things, and it adds functionality. In this scenario, a lot of times with the menus where they expand and contract and you have various levels of menus, people use jQuery to do that. We're going to include jQuery with this. So I'm just going to go to a new tab, and I'm going to say jQuery get started. One of the first things, of course, is W3 Schools. As I've said before, it's a reference I use often. So let's go ahead and take a look at it. Now, if I wanted to download jQuery, I could download the jQuery, put it in the site, and it would work fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But I don't want to have to worry about keeping up to date with what jQuery, if there's any changes within the versions, I don't want to have to worry about it. So what I want to do is actually use this jQuery Cdn, which is Content Delivery Network. Basically, it means that the jQuery is stored elsewhere, and I just reference that point. And this tells me how to get started. There's two options here, Google and Microsoft. You know, if either one of these go down, you're in a world of hurt anyhow. But we'll pick Google just because we can. I'm going to copy this out. Notice that this is in the head here. So that's where we're going to put it in our HTML. Go back to index. I'm going to go scroll up, and I'm just going to paste it in before the closing head tag. And once we have it in place, I've saved it, I go back, I refresh it, nothing happens. I go to the regular menu, I hover over, it works. If I click, it doesn't do anything because it's picking up on the hover. So, you know, just putting the jQuery in there doesn't do anything at all. We actually have to have it do something. Now, I did a little bit of research because this is, I could have spent a long time doing this during the video, and that wouldn't have helped you any necessarily. What we want to do is toggle. Toggle will automatically hide and display a section of code. Here's, you know, the jQuery information on it. Basically, with no parameters, toggle will toggle the visibility of the elements. But what we're wanting to do is toggle the visibility of this UL, and we want to do it by clicking on the navigation. There's a function that you can use. I guess attribute might be a better word. On click. And basically that is saying whenever anybody clicks this element, that it will do this action. We're going to say on click equals single quote $. Now this invokes jQuery, and we want it to affect dot menu. Well, if you're looking, dot menu, there is no dot menu, so we're going to have to do this. Remember, dot indicates class, dot menu, and then we are going to toggle that element. We're going to change the display of that element. And the one I want to change is the UL. So we're going to give it a class equals menu. Save it, and let's go back and look at this. Still works the way we want it to. Awesome, right? Now let's go ahead and change it to a pixel 2, and if we click on it, there we go, click, it displays it. To click off, it doesn't. This works the way we want it to. You'll notice if you watch this, I can't bump up the size of I can't bump up. I'm pointing towards the screen. Can you see what I'm pointing at? Now I'm pointing, so I'm pointing at the UL. Notice it doesn't have a class, so I didn't refresh this. Okay, let me refresh this. Now we have a class equals menu over here. Let me go ahead and get this closer together. I'm going to bring this in, and so it'll all be visible on the screen. If I click on this, notice it says display none. I click on it again. It doesn't give a style, so it will display block. Toggled again, display none, goes back and forth. If you'll notice, when I do this, shift refresh, when I first click this, it changes it to display none, but it's already display none in CSS. So what it's actually looking at is the elements in line value, or it could be looking at the class. So let's change this real quick. And instead of dealing with, we have class UL hover UL dot. So let's change this from nav hover UL. This will still keep the display block, but let's change this to dot menu. So it's going to have the same class. Let's save this and go back, refresh this. Now let's try it and see what happens. Okay, it's still changing it to display none. So to get this so that somebody doesn't have to click on it twice to get it to show up, what we have to do is in the index.html, you shouldn't put styles in line. This is still true, but in this case, I might say that it is acceptable. Style equals display none. I'm going to save it and refresh. Now when I click on it, notice that it's display none. First click, it displays it, goes off. I click over here. That's the only problem. I click off here, it's displaying. I click over here, it hides it, but it still didn't toggle this style. So there's a little bit of glitchiness about this, but in general it works. The other thing I noticed is that this is, I don't notice it right now, but if we go wider screen and get rid of the preview of mobile device, and I'm going to bring this back down in size. I guess we can bring that up. Okay. I'm going to go back down in size. Notice that my name is now off center. Like if we were to draw an imaginary line, this is off center. That is because we've added an element and we didn't modify the flex. So we have, if we look at our code, we have our header, we have a div of logo, we have the div for my name, and then this doesn't have flex assigned to it. The flex is actually assigned to the nav button. So we need to make a quick change in the CSS to get things lined up again. Go to style, and all I'm going to do is say flex equals, or flex 1 for nav. We can get rid of the flex 1 for the nav button. Let's save this, go back, refresh, and now everything's centered back up again. All right, we have now the ability to, it overwrote the hover. And the reason why it overwrote the hover was the inline style, okay? When we put, let's go back and forth and just keep going back and forth. When I put this inline style in, that overwrites that hover. So there's a decision to be made there. Do we have it so that when they first click, they have to click twice for it to show up? Or do we deal with not having to hover, and on the mobile device, they have to click for it to show up? There's always considerations of things to do, but now we have a working navigation that will expand out, and it expands out over top of the main content, so you don't have this where everything's yo-yoing. All right, have a great day, and that's it for this. Oh, no, it's not. What did I say? I said we are going to be, well, actually, I didn't say it in this clip. One of the things we want to make sure of is that we're always checking Git, because that's going to create problems if you're working in a group. You always want to go back and make sure that there hasn't been changes done by somebody else. Now, in this scenario, I've already checked and there hasn't been any changes, but you do that just by simply clicking Fetch Origin. And you can see that there's 2 changed files. And if we click on the CSS, we can see that I've added this nav, and in the index, you can see that I've added the script and then added the nav on click and the UL. These are all changes. When I looked at this before, if I look at the history, I can see here, added header and footer. Well, I was being a bad example because I didn't commit on each one. I should have made the header, committed that header, made the footer, committed the footer. So now that we've got the navigation in place, we're going to commit it. We're going to be better about keeping track of our changes in GitHub. So for the summary, let's do navigation. That's what we worked on, navigation, and added jQuery and display on click for menu. I'm going to head and commit to master. And why is it not saving it? Oh, okay. So I had to select the files I wanted. Sorry about that. And we'll go commit to master. Now if I look at my history, I have navigation, added jQuery, and display on click for menu. So now we have an idea of what I did, and we can see the changes that are associated with that. I'm going to go ahead and push this to origin, which means it's going to put it up on GitHub, so that when I'm working on my laptop, I can just fetch it, and I'll have the code as it's sitting right now. Hopefully I haven't made any changes on my laptop, because then that's going to cause a conflict. All right. Well, now this time, I mean it. Have a great day.